This is, I think, only the second presentation I've done in my life. I'm quite impressed with the graphics and with the template that I've chosen. The topic is somewhat controversial to a lesser and little more degree. But as you'll see through these 12, 13 slides, I can't remember how many I went with this morning when I finalized this thing, I'm basically going to try to show you how capitalism and how corporate venture capitalism, especially in terms of speculative investment, has co-opted cannabis culture, and how this binary discussion of we're having false dichotomies of legalization, decriminalization, are actually causing far more harm than just getting the whole thing out of the way. Right, so I suppose actually before we do this, I'll speak of myself. I've just realized I've got an hour, not half an hour. The wonderful people, the organizers, shout out the Product Earth crew and Mr. Sam Cannon for putting all this together. So yeah, 3 days ago, I was allowed to double the length of this talk, so I'm not going to run through it as fast as I initially thought I had to. So first of all, if you haven't heard me speak before, you don't know anything about me, my name is Simpa Carter. Several years ago, I started Durham City Cannabis Club up in the northeast. We took advantage of the fact that at the time, our PCC in CC, that's Police Crime Commissioner and Chief Constable, agreed a kind of tacit pact where they would deprioritize cannabis cultivation, possession, and cultural activity, let's call it that. So this led to the establishment of several clubs in the northeast. It led to a model that was then permeated out into, I think, 9 constabularies now out of the 45, to have a discretionary model whereby if you are caught in low-level possession or in low cultivation, you are then put into a checkpoint scheme. So you are diverted from criminalization, you're basically put into a room and go, drugs are bad, and you go, I'm sorry, drugs are bad, I know. Slap on the wrist, and you literally sign up to get this. You sign a piece of paper that says, while I am on this course, I won't break the law. You're allowed to break the law as soon as you finish the course. So they created this real interesting discretionary space where for a few years the clubs really started to merge. We started to have a real position within the UK cannabis industry in the cannabis scene. We started to get international sort of interest. There was a lot of people kind of moved in, and the club scene really grew pre-COVID. Unfortunately, COVID, as the same with everything else, kind of leveled this. So all of the work that I was doing around Durham City Cannabis Club and what I was trying to do to build community-led organizations, cooperatives where individuals cultivated their own cannabis to their own high standards. They sold it for a fair market rate to each other, kept it insular, and removed themselves from a criminal marketplace. Unfortunately, this kind of died a death, as I said, with lockdowns, social distancing, and basically the end of the kind of community that we wanted to build. So in the summer of last year, a mate of mine who'd been pestering me for quite a few years to start a podcast said, now's the time to do it. After about the 3rd time, I said, I'll do it, but only if you're my co-host. So subsequently, we launched the Simpa Life as a kind of a project, which is larger than just the remit of cannabis. I've worked previously, written articles and worked on documentaries with the BBC and others around psychedelic substances, which I've utilized myself through microdosing and taking very large doses to deal with various traumas and issues that have arisen from a very disruptive, and sort of quite unusual life. But that's led me to have a really unique worldview, mindset, and kind of the ability I feel to have an overview of the systems that are trying to exactly that, co-opt this culture. So yeah, shameless plug, but check out thesimpalife.com. So first of all, what is cannabis? Firstly, cannabis is cannabis. Doesn't matter if you call it hemp, doesn't matter if you call it weed, ganja, whatever term you use for it, it is the same plant. It is all Cannabis sativa L. It is a fast-growing annual dioecious flowering herb. That means it separates itself into male and female. This shows that there is some intrinsic intelligence in this. Tyler Green from My Smoke, who's in the crowd right now, me and him did a series on YouTube in which we discussed sort of this idea of what's happening with cannabis. And I theorized this idea that it has an intrinsic intelligence. You go fields, feminized seeds, they're hermy, they're male. It has this desire to be there, to reproduce. There is this intrinsic adaptability to cannabis. So whether it's the long fibrous so-called Cannabis sativa that arises from the West, which actually, when you look at the archaeological history of it, came from the East, came from what we consider to be Cannabis indica, is all of the same genus and the same plant. It's just adapted to the individual climates and environments and expressed itself differently. This has then meant that different cultures have kind of taken on different meanings, different uses, and this has kind of left us with these, again, false dichotomies that we'll come on to sort of later. It is a highly versatile and adaptive resource. As we've said, it is far more than just a drug or a therapeutic substance. It is the potential to clothe us, to feed us, to heal us, to sequester carbon from the atmosphere, to create a carbon sink economy rather than a carbon pump and dump economy. As I've said, it was the first intentionally, or arguably, there's a few people there's not really the consensus, but there's a few people considered to be pseudoscientists that are arguing this is the first agricultural crop. With recent evidence on one of the Japanese islands, we have it back to about 10 to 11,000 years. There is a contentious piece of fiber that comes from what is now the modern Czech Republic, or Czechia, that is somewhere in the region of 20,000 years old. Again, considered pseudoscience because ultimately there is no consensus on this because we're still arguing over its constituent parts. And last point, obviously, most misunderstood plant in human history. I think that goes without saying. No, where am I pointing? There we go. So the history of cannabis, like I said, it's our oldest companion species. From modern studies, we seem to be able to trace it back to 28 million years ago in the Tibetan Plateau. My own personal theory, which is something that I'm working on as a blog series for my website, suggests that as the tectonic plates have collided and have created the Hindu range of mountains, the higher UV light has then pushed subspecies up to then force to evolve. This is then what's given us ultimately cannabinoids, because THC is a protectant for the plant. It's a wonderful euphoric intoxicant for us, but it is a necessary byproduct of the plant's protection and health, which again we'll get onto in a bit. First historic medical reference that we have, again contentious, but it is the one that is taken as consensus, is from Chinese history about 2,000 years ago. First industrial cultivation is 8,000 years BC, so it's slightly more than that. Depends if you want to round it up or round it down, 10 to 11,000 years ago. Found in agricultural, archaeological sites, around most civilizations and ancient cultures. More and more we're seeing the icon of the hemp leaf. We're seeing representations of what we know as being the icons and the models and, totems that arose from the cultures that worshipped the natural world. So we're starting to understand this, say, like the tree of life in ancient Egypt being one that we can derive DMT from, for example. So we're starting to apply new knowledge to old history and really understand the length of time we've interacted with these substances and compounds. Built and powered the British up as put their hempire. As you know, there are a lot of places in the UK that are named after hemp. Hemp at one point within our history was actually a legal requisite to cultivate under Henry VIII and in the Tudor times. If you had a certain amount of land, you had to put a certain amount of it aside to what they called at the time hemp, which would have been cannabis because it wouldn't have arbitrarily been under 0.2% THC, thus cannabis, hemp, cannabis. The rigs and the sails and everything of the ships of when we went off and colonized the world. I'm not going to argue about the politics of that being better or for worse, but the ships had to have a staple of seeds to be able to cultivate the first crop when they land, to repair sails, to repair ropes as a nutritional fiber, because obviously cannabis is a complete protein, or the hemp seeds, or cannabis, low THC cannabis seeds. Again, another thing we'll get onto later about hemp versus low THC. Like I say, present in the history of most Asian cultures and first world societies. So the industrial applications and potential of cannabis, literally I used the tagline for the club, was growing the future, is because the byproduct of what I wanted from cannabis when I was first utilizing it, the flower, was waste to me. In a lot of ways, because I don't have the industry or the access, it still kind of is. The fibrous material, the cellulose, the breakdownable materials that can be derived into graphene and construction materials, into biofuels, made into emulsions, biodegradable plastics. Obviously, we have a major thing in the minute. We're seeing endocrine disruption in male hormones, and this has been linked back to BPAs and BPZs in plastics. We're all eating now about a credit card's worth of plastic a week, which is terrifying when you really think about it. Cannabis polymers can be made into plastics that don't have these degrading and leaching properties, which therefore are not going to cause that long-term degradation to our health. The potential of it to remediate soil and as a water filtration, this is something that in China and India they knew for a long time, growing along waterways would purify water because of the depth of the roots and the ability for it to turn basically brown water into clean water. It's a very powerful filtration system as a plant, if you want to look at it that way. Natural carbon sequesters 325 kilograms of atmospheric carbon per ton when cultivated. There's very other few things in nature that are able to produce that, and then as a byproduct, we can use it to create concrete, which is the term I'm using for hempcrete, because technically that's a brand name. So building materials, let's say you can derive it into now cannabis graphene, which graphene was discovered 15 years ago in Manchester, is a single atom thin. It's shaped in a sort of honeycomb lattice, and it's 100 times more conductive than copper, 200 times stronger than steel. Canadian guy figured a way as a byproduct to find that from the herd, the inner white stalkness of the plant, which you strip away the outer fibers, to derive that for really cheap. The properties of this means that when it's condensed, you can make them into supercapacitor batteries, which under current testing is looking more ethical and more efficient than the lithium cell batteries we're using in modern cars. Like I said, fabric and textiles, cotton currently uses what I think is 25% of all pesticides globally. Cannabis, when cultivated, doesn't need these pesticides, especially when you use Korean no-till techniques, or you use ancient knowledge of farming to actually integrate nature to it. You're not trying to remove the bugs. You're not trying to remove all of these natural ecosystem. You're working in harmony. Again, we want to get as byproducts the ability to grow our future and to build a non-polluting, non-toxic, non-destructive future. But if we're going to do that by cultivating cannabis in warehouses and missing the ability to sequester the carbon, or we're going to cultivate the flower for oils to heal ourselves, but we're then going to throw away the byproducts when we could be building our homes. It has to be this vertically integrated thing moving forward to me, otherwise I feel we're going to miss the greatest potential of this, and this is to tackle climate change. It is to tackle wealth inequality, homelessness, the idea of disparity, of the idea of limited resource. Cannabis is, as I said before, it's nature. It grows, it hermaphrodizes, produces seeds, gives you generations more of that potentiality. It is a limitless resource if managed correctly. The therapeutic benefits of cannabis. All cannabis has medical value. This is something, again, is really quite contentious, especially in the UK over the past 3 years, since November 2018, as the establishment would like, I suppose, you to term it, medical cannabis has been legalized. But actually what medical cannabis means under legislation in this country is under the 2001 Misuse of Drugs Regulation, it is actually Schedule 2, and it is a cannabis-based medicinal product designed for human consumption. So under that legalese definition, cannabis doesn't meet the criteria for that. It remains a Schedule 1 Class B drug under 1971 Misuse of Drugs Act. So what they've done is created two definitions for the same entity. So therefore, it's a licensing problem. Do you have a prescription? Do you have the right to grow? Have you got the right piece of paper? So this division caused then through the medical communities we're seeing now is that when it was legalized under the premise of 1.5 million people being able to gain access 3 years ago, less than 10,000 have got access right now. And each one of them is paying for a consultation fee each time. Yes, they've got it down, granted, from like 900 quid to under things like Project 21, 150 quid an ounce. Yeah, beating street value in most places. But the continuity, the consistency of the cultivars isn't there. This is something that we'll talk about in another slide sort of later on. But yeah, it is our oldest plant medicine used to treat a multitude of diseases and conditions. Again, the evidence that we're seeing in older world cultures, it falls into our understanding of a few definitions. Is it cultural? Was it a religious use? Did they use it therapeutically? Whereas what we're actually starting to understand is if you take away our limited perception of it and our divisional thought process, they just used it. It was cultivated and every part of it was then consumed. Yeah, there would be sort of shamanic, ritualistic use of it in other ways, but it wasn't then deemed of trying to, you wouldn't have the diagnoses or the conditions of epilepsy, but people that exhibited these sorts of things would then be treated culturally with the plant medicines that they had around them. They didn't obviously have the modern science that we have now, but in some ways, we're only treating symptoms. And this is what medical cannabis is doing at the minute. Look at what Sativex, the first product that was produced in the UK, that reduces spasticity in MS. You talk to the average MS consumer, they want raw whole plant cannabis because instead of just managing spasticity, they manage their diet, they manage their sleep, they manage their mood and depression. You know, it helps with other chronic pains that are comorbid with this condition. The whole plant, its wider benefits are something that need to be looked at rather than, I don't want to say bastardifying it and butchering it into single components to be used for single symptom management. Therefore, it becomes a maintenance drug and we miss its potential healing benefit. So I'm struggling to see my own slides with that light. Sorry, guys. Boost immune system. So this is something that we've seen. Because of the human endocannabinoid system, endogenous cannabinoids and phytocannabinoids that then we're consuming, whatever your consumption method decreases or increases the efficacy of the cannabinoids. But ultimately what they're doing is supplementing an endogenous response. They're mimicking something that happens in our bodies. There's a lot of consensus that is coming together at the minute for an idea of chronic endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome. Some conditions come in of it, some conditions fall out of it, but basically what they're trying to do is understand, is there an underlying link? If this is the largest regulatory system in the human body, If it is dysregulated, surely it will dysregulate the other peripheral systems. So there are people that are trying to do the wider knowledge. The problem that we have now, which we'll come on to shortly, is the specialization of knowledge. The need to hold that data, to hold that information, to be able to create patented, profitable products. Look at GW's list. Anybody want to go on Google, type in GW Pharmaceuticals patents. Look at the list they have for cannabinoids causing apoptosis, cannabinoids treating cancer, cannabinoids treating a whole host of conditions. And they've had these, some of them going back 20 years. Yet we're not allowed to talk about it. So this knowledge is there, it's just hidden by this system that is triple-blind, placebo-controlled studies. Cannabis doesn't fit into the traditional pharmacological model. She just doesn't. She doesn't treat a single symptom because it helps that system. It will help you sleep even if you take it for pain. You know what I mean? It helps in so many different ways. It's almost like a stem cell drug in that sense. And I say that not as with no academic background. I mean it in the generalized thought idea that it goes into the body because it supplements the system. It finds the deficient points and thus works on it. And this is where they're getting this idea of this chronic endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome. As I said, we've got more than enough evidence from around the world, whether it's accepted in the UK or not is a different matter, that cannabis causes apoptosis, which is like a form of cell self-destruction in cancer cells, leading to remission. Reduce and stop seizures. We've known about this since the day of William O'Shaughnessy, when in the early 1800s he was in northern India and was studying how they used it to treat the shaking babies. I think was the terms, it was before we had seizures in most of the modern medical nomenclature. Prophylactic therapeutic. Why the hell are we not talking about cannabis as a prophylactic? Ultimately, that is one of the things that we are missing here. If we're seeing this chronic endocannabinoid deficiency caused by something else in our environment, in our food or our diet or whatever way that we are getting this deficiency arising from our environment, we should all be in some way using this. I've been pitching the idea softly and quite hard in some cases as well, for a few years now, of fortifying cereals and grains with low psychoactive or non-psychoactive cannabinoids. So if we did things like with CBG, CBD, we're in breakfast cereals, we're in breads, we're in complex foods that we've then put together. We would be supplementing these systems without letting them crash, then needing a medical treatment. We would be creating wellness before illness. A non-invasive psychiatric tool for treating depression, anxiety, and many other conditions. Anyone that knows me, has known me personally, has known my life story, will know the reason I am stood on this stage is because of this plant. I have been agoraphobic, I have been terrified, I have been shy, and I have lost decades of my life to chronic illnesses, psychiatric illnesses that have arisen because of the consequences of the trauma of a very destructive life, as I've said. But this plant has given me back my life, it has given me my confidence, it has given me a future, and I hope it'll give us all the opportunity to live in a better world. Ironically, we live in the culture of skunk psychosis. I don't know why I hit that note really hard there, guys, sorry. But actually, globally, psychiatric studies and psychotherapy, these are actually leading the study into this. These guys have been crashing out for the past 50 years with selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs, having horrible side effects, having horribly destructive consequences to people who are sad because they had a bereavement 10 months ago and they're not quite over it yet. The doctor's going to prescribe this potentially life-changing intervention. Whereas we know then with cannabis, you talk to most consumers, what are they managing, what are they treating, is in some form they're aware of the world. We know from meta-tests of people with depression that they actually score far higher on aptitude tests. Sorry, just a good idea what time we're on. Oh, sweet. On aptitude tests, therefore, the more depressed you are, the more aware you are of the world. So you want something to escape that pain. Society says you can have alcohol. A lot of people that consume cannabis then develop a difficult relationship with alcohol because they notice the difference. One is causes metacognition, introspection. It causes them to think about themselves and who they want to be and how they want to act. Alcohol, for most people, you wake up with the next day with the kind of, probably shouldn't have done that, what did I do, what was this? And it feels like a reset, whereas cannabis feels like a progressive kind of way of escaping or alleviating the bombardment of the stresses of modern life. Did we cover everything in there? Oh yeah, and again, complete protein with all essential, non-essential amino acids. I think chia seeds are the only other thing in nature that is that damn good. Cannabis prohibition, a legacy of racism, classism, and elitism. The prohibition of nature is the abnormality, folks. We have been doing drugs forever. If any of you are a fan of Terence McKenna and the idea, you may have seen the idea of the stoned ape theory, that humans evolved the frontal neocortex as a result of us eating psilocybin-containing mushrooms. If you really think of it, if you look at the progressive explosion in evolution of humanity, something had to happen. This is where you get these wonderful conspiracy theorists on the internet going, it was aliens, it was aliens. But it wasn't. It was clearly substances like this that cause neurogenesis, that cause, they used to call it hemispheric connection. I think it's an older term. What they mean by this is it causes neural pathways to open. You have these wild and weird and wonderful thoughts, parts of the brain connect that didn't connect before. And so the more we interacted with these things, and obviously a lot of people will have died along the way, the brave that went and picked the death cap, it'll probably taken 4 or 5 of us before we went, not that one. You know what I mean? But the idea of seeing God, we have this notion that most of the modern religions come from psychedelic experiences. So Moses in the burning bush, analogy for DMT, for example. There's a great field of study around this. And so, like I say, prohibition technically started, I suppose, in Islam in about the 14th century. It was far more restrictive. Then in the 15th century, they tried to restrict Irish monks from consuming psilocybin-containing mushrooms. What we know to be modern prohibition, I suppose, began with the British colonies, in which they basically set India and China kind of against each other and traded commodities against them. They weaponized for the first time substances with dependent potential, or what most people call addictive qualities. I just don't like the word addiction. I don't think it fits. And yes, it's the co-option of indigenous knowledge and traditional therapeutic practices and the criminalization of their cultures. Everything that we have today in some form comes from ancient knowledge, comes from shamanic practice, comes from individuals, as I said, that were brave enough to interact with compounds that for some would scar them for life. They'd have this experience and that was it, I don't know what the caveman version of Dave is, but Dave in his cave, chilling away because he ate one mushroom one time and he can't deal with this thing. He doesn't have the language, the ability to articulate, to communicate to others. And I think this is where the ceremonies started to arise from. And from this, anyone that has had a high-end experience on one of the classic psychedelic compounds will have kind of experienced it's almost telepathy with the people you're on. If you look at each other and you both know the thing. And that is, again, theorized by some quite pseudo-scientists, but some very interesting individuals, to potentially be the root cause of consciousness within humans. So say, for example, paracetamol, derived from the bark of a tree, which was knowledge taken from First World American culture. A lot of the modern substances that we're now seeing that have been classic psychedelics in culture, as in we've been taking them at free parties and whatever else for forever, they're now creating patented synthetic analogues of, because they're now wanting ketamine-infusing treatments. They're going to use LSD for alcoholism. They're going to use MDMA for PTSD. They're co-opting substances that are used by cultures. They don't just have to be indigenous cultures as in tribal cultures. I belong to the free party scene. We have broke the law. We have stood there. We have taken drugs, gathered as a community, gathered with rigs and partied. We're a culture. We're a community. We deserve representation. We've learned this knowledge. When we're going to the doctor and saying, mate, I took MDMA the other day at a festival and I spoke to this guy and I brought up this childhood trauma and I felt light and I felt free and in one day I let go of 20 years of pain. That's from our anecdotes. That's from our life. We're a culture that deserves representation, and this is translatable across the world. Modern capitalism, venture capitalism, seeing that easy buck, seeing what Greenrush did in America over the past 20 years, they went in on that, while still criminalizing us for doing it. They're going to schedule these compounds and these substances while then creating a licensing system that if you've got enough money, you can pay to do what you want with the patient. And if they're harmed by it, they signed a waiver. They paid. It was a service. They're not going to go to prison. Yet the guy at a festival that sells somebody a pill that was tainted from a supply he didn't control, the media and society wants us to imprison him for a murderer? This isn't right. This is bullshit. It is from... am I allowed to... I don't even check if I'm allowed to swear. Sorry, Sam. The British used prohibition. We weaponized it. We were the first to weaponize it, to sell drugs while criminalizing them. We realized this was a profitable model, and we've been replicating it ever since. The UK grows and exports the most medical cannabis for medical purposes in the world, yet we don't sell any of it domestically. In 2016, we were the world's largest importer of medical cocaine. Less than a third of that left the country of export. We don't prescribe it in this country. Where is it? The Sun newspaper did an interesting article. The Sun, think about it, the Sun did a fucking article on this. So we didn't get an answer. All they did was ask a question and everyone went, sure. So Reefer Madness and Skunk Psychosis. Like I said, Reefer Madness was the first wave of skunk psychosis. That's the British version. This arose at the same time GW Pharmaceuticals arose in the UK. So in the mid-90s, the UK put together a royal commission to look at the potential therapeutic benefits of cannabis based on what was happening out in California with the legalization of medical marijuana. I can't help but go American whenever I say medical marijuana. Yeah, and so they then created a list of prescribable conditions, and then they had a wave of people going, I've got back pain. Oh, doctor, I can't sleep. And so suddenly everybody was paying $100 and getting their legit legal weed. And then so this Royal Commission came back after a year and went, oh, we found all this amazing stuff with all this cultural use, this historic potential, and went, let's decriminalize it, let's research it, let's figure out a way to get it to the people. This is the future. 6 months later, a private pharmaceutical company called GW was created. The document that should have been released to the public was buried in the Lancet psychiatric pages and was never published again. GW went on to change the law in 2001, which I can't remember if I've taken this. No, I've left the slide in, so we'll cover that a bit more. They got the law changed in 2001 so that they could prescribe and sell cannabis products that were Schedule 1 by creating this new misuse of drugs regulation. And alongside that came skunk psychosis. Do you know what GW's first product was? Sativex. Do you know what the genetic, the cultivar of that thousands of tons that they've grown is? Skunk number 1. That is not a coincidence. I work in media at the minute. I do a lot of research. I connect with a hell of a lot of people. Anyone that knows me knows all I'm trying to do is find knowledge, find truth, and speak it to others, and to find commonality, to find out if others can see what the hell I can, and see that this has always been here. We deserve it, and we don't have to fucking pay. Sorry, Sam. We don't have to pay for it. So yeah, the Reefer Madness was obviously created in the 20s and in America, and was a response by industry, effectively. It was timber, it was oil, it was very big players in a small scene that were going to globalize. And this idea of hemp, this potential of this endless resource that had been grown in nature, was a threat to them. So by criminalizing marijuana, the flowers, the cannabinoid-containing wonderful fruit that is bared from this glorious plant, they were able to criminalize all its other potential qualities. They did this with the marijuana tax in 1937, I think it is, in America. You can actually plot this on climate graphs. This is when we started going into the shit. Then in the 70s, we got to 1971. Is this one? Yep. And we got the Misuse of Drugs Act. The Misuse of Drugs Act was born out of a report that came from the 1950s by the World Health Organization that is one of the most racist, bigoted, bullshit things that you will ever read. But this is a quote from a man called John Ehrlichman. He was the Nixon domestic policy chief when Richard Nixon was in the White House. It reads, for anyone that can't be asked reading it, I can't read it. The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and the blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt their communities, we could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. That is the origin of the modern war on drugs, is Nixon, led into Reagan, led into hell. Millions have died and suffered as a consequence of this. You look at cataclysmic climate change, consequence of the end of industrialized usage of this in indigenous places around the world. From 1971, we started eradicating this everywhere. Cannabis, as we spoke of earlier, one of the best carbon sequestration technologies, if you want to call it that, in the world. Again, all correlatory. But then from this position, you can understand then what's happening in the UK. It's slightly less about race over here. We're far more of a class society. We're British. We give the class system to the world. And it translates across race in this country. Unless, of course, you're in a highly dense area of basically non-white. If you're ethnic or of any non, I don't want to say indigenous, that's a horrible way of describing it. If you're basically just non-white British, you have a propensity of somewhere between 4 to 12% more likelihood of being targeted for stop and search. Yet if you are black in London, for example, I think it's 30% less likely to be in possession, but targeted 10 times more. The system is screwed. It is an excuse, a tool, a powerful tool to disrupt our communities, to vilify us on the evening news, to break up our communities. They're telling us what they were doing. This translates across the world. We need to really understand the history of this before we can build an industry on this. We can't allow the same classism, racism, hatred and division to profit and prosper while people are still in prison, people are still in pain and people still suffer. It is only through honesty. I pitched the idea, stolen from the end of apartheid in South Africa, of a Truth and Reconciliation Committee. Everybody gets their shit together, we get in a room and we tell what the hell just happened. Because the legacy of this, unless exposed today, will haunt us into whatever little time we have left. Because if we don't accept that this is our only future in terms of resource, as we discussed before, graphene, the future of energy solution and storage. We're talking about the end of fossil fuel dependence, a closed carbon economy, homes for all. We can actually then start to detoxify our soils. We can remove pesticides and things like glyphosates, which are destroying everything around us, from our diet and from the use in industry and agriculture. Cannabis is literally our future, but it starts with being honest. And we have to talk about this. I am white. I sound quite articulate. You know what I mean? I am lucky. You think 20 years ago we could do any of this? You think if I was a different skin color in a different area, I'd have managed to build my experience and knowledge without being targeted and destroyed by these systems that now seek to sell us back our freedom? Yeah, so here we go. This is the slide I didn't know if I kept in. The Great Medical Cannabis Con. Again, very contentious. Medical cannabis doesn't exist. Cannabis for medical use does. This is something we have to be very careful of. We are solidifying and creating false dichotomies. Every time somebody goes, I'm using medical cannabis, what you're saying is everybody else using cannabis can't use it medically because they're not using medical cannabis. What we currently have is a prescribable system to medical grade, or as I use the term, and it is slowly catching since I first wrote this for you, pharmaceuticalized. Pharmaceuticalized cannabis ran through a system of good manufacturing practice, hitting certain regulations and certain points. That's what we have, but it's no magic, different texture, compounds or construction than the stuff that's been grown in the cupboards. In some ways, it can actually be grown better. We know about craft and micro grows and the ability to control climate, nutrients, and everything else to such a degree that you can maximize that product in a way that you just can't on scale. And we're seeing flaws and faults with this en masse. So we're seeing issues with the prescriptions in this country where we have percentage over profile prescribing. And what I mean by that is they go, CBD good, THC bad. So we'll give you this much THC, this much CBD. What about the terpene profile? What about the synergy between these things? If I sit and smoke something that's limonene rich right now, I'm going to be jittery talking to you guys and I'm going to be going a bit extra because that's the way it affects me. If I smoke something myrcene heavy, I'm going to be... And that matters if you don't have an experience with cannabis. So then you get this new product and woof, and you're vaporizing this thing and it's giving you, oh, I'm energetic and I'm awake and raw. And then you go to get the prescription again and they can't access it. So what do? They go shopping. What was it before? 22 THC, 1% CBD? Go find that somewhere else. They match you with a different terp profile. It's come from a different country. The carbon footprint on your couple of grams, yeah, you may get it down to slightly below market value here, but the carbon you're pumping into it, the unnecessary industry that you're creating, the rigor and bureaucracy and the, again, bullshit. It's unnecessary. Yes, we need pharmaceutical standards. We need quality products for very bespoke things. Dealing with seizures with epilepsy, for example, we're starting to break it down to understand what receptors and what is happening within the system. That will always, in my opinion, for people under age of 18, I don't know why I didn't say people, kids, children, tell them not to spend any time around them. The children under the age of 18, that they can't make an informed consent. So therefore, they should have to then should be given access to products that are as standardized as possible, but also in some ways bespoke for their condition. And this is something that we find is quite difficult with cannabis because she's so adaptive. She doesn't standardize very well. Hit me. Well, that is a very interesting point. This was something I didn't have too much time to be able to prepare all of this, but I work obviously quite intimately with some regulators across the, I was going to say devolved kingdoms. They're not quite fully devolved, but Scotland and Wales, for example. And some of the things that they're doing around testing at the minute, they're finding discrepancies of up to 9 or 10%. 9 or 10% on these products. And again, if they're not matching profiles, we know through co-crystallization of cannabinoids and terpenes and flavonoids that they actually massively increase efficacy. To use a crude analogy, I was trying to find a picture this morning, but I couldn't find Wi-Fi on top of my car when I was writing it up to get the image. But basically, the receptor fits better, the cannabinoid fits better into the receptor alongside a terpene that is co-crystallized with it. It's synergistically, it's more potent and more powerful, but it sits in the receptor better, so therefore it is absorbed better, it is more ethical and more useful. Suppression of research and knowledge is something we touched on before, of the idea of since the creation of this medical cannabis industrial complex, as I call it, the incentive has been to find what works, create a patent on it, get real-world data, make the product, go out and get the study, sell it to the public. 10, 15, 20 years of suffering and misery when you had the initial proof on day one, but because you couldn't profit it, patent it, and make it a cash cow, you've let all these people down, you've let them all suffer. So that's something that I rally against quite heavily with this. I mean, if we're worth anything in this country, the legacy we should protect is the NHS. We shouldn't be allowing private clinics and private prescribers. We should be creating one metadata research database in which all data is pushed into so that we can try and figure out what the hell is going on with this plant, why it works so differently across the spectrum of us. We all have a unique endocannabinoid system that is basically as unique as a fingerprint. So what works for me won't work for you. We could sit together and have a smoke, and I'll get high, and you'll get low, as it were. You'll get sedated and slow and slurry and tired, and I'll get energetic. There's so much more to this. We can't oversimplify it into this, well, THC and this ratio of that. No, it's far more nuanced than that. And until they accept it and stop trying to prescribe it and tell people that we're going to solve everything with a ratioed percentage, it's just not true. It's a simple oversell and marketing and advertising ploy, effectively. GW Pharmaceutical, cartel and racket, we touched on that briefly earlier, about how the Royal Commission led to the creation of this private pharmaceutical company. It also led to 2001, the creation of the misuse of drugs regulations. So Schedule 2, as we discussed, came in November 2018 in the UK, and that created this distinction and definition of cannabis for medical purposes. It's cannabis-derived medications for human consumption. And yeah, so like I said, it creates this magical system where that's medical, but if you then take that flower, you set it on fire, that's a Schedule 1 drug, because you're not allowed to combust. Yet we know about efficacy of cannabinoids, we know about efficacy of combustion over vaporization. There is obviously some new school research that suggests to be able to break down individual constituents, vaporization's spot on. You go in low, you hit your terpenes, you go in high, you hit your cannabinoids. Whereas combustion seems to cause the forced oxidization and carboxylation of the remaining fresh cannabinoids. So you're then going straight to end product. So yeah, you lose some terpenes in it, but the transference of the product means you get the end cannabinoid. You're not left with an acidic form of a cannabinoid, which some people actually develop a sensitivity to THCA, which isn't really criminalized in this country, which is very interesting. There's a lot of nuance in the law about how people are trying to exploit that currently. That's something I can't talk on because I didn't prepare a slide for it. Private clinics profiteering from patients, as I've said, this has got better. They have got it down to 150, you know what I mean? But at the economics and the scale that they're working at, they could get that down to nothing. And as I said, the idea of then funding NHS to grow and cultivate its own cannabis, ultimately we could see a system where they sell adult consumption cannabis grown to pharmaceutical grade and quality to the people while producing these cannabis-based medicinal products. Data collection to create patented CBPMs, the cannabis-based products for medicinal use. We're seeing this with a lot of pharmaceutical companies now that are starting to eat each other, cannabis companies that started as recreational, going medical, going back into recreational, splitting. There's so much going on because everyone is trying to own certain patents, because if you are the man that holds the thing that works, you could license it out to the various regions and territories. People want to replicate it. They're trying to, in some ways, control the entirety of the plant. If you can control the patent on the extraction, control the patent on the cultivation process, on delivery mechanisms, on certain percentages, which is something GW did very, very heavily again, research GW's patents. What have we missed on there? No, I think we covered that one. Next. False dichotomies. Here we go. So a dichotomy is the space between two things, and so a false dichotomy is the artificial space created between them. So, what have I done there? I've pressed it, sorry guys. Yeah, hemp versus cannabis. Hemp doesn't really exist. Hemp is a colloquial term. It's come from the Germanic through Saxon into Old English, to basically mean what was changed in the 17th century to be Cannabis sativa L. Named for Carl Linus, I think his name is, Linnaeus. Butchering you, what's his name? Linus, there you go. Thank you, Tyler. And so then we standardized it because we wanted to understand what the hell was going on with this. How could a plant present with this big, bushy, beautiful, wide-ranging color and a real intoxicating effect on one side of the planet, and present with these monstrous, stringy trees on the other? And they all come from the same genus. There's been a lot of contentious science go back and forth, especially if you look at the Soviet era. I think they got it up to about 30 different subcultivars, which really confused science for a little while. We've taken it now back down to basically be Cannabis ruderalis, Cannabis sativa, and Cannabis indica. Cannabis sativa is so cannabis that's cultivated, is what it means from its roots. Cannabis indica actually means cannabis of India. So what we know from what I spoke of before with the Tibetan plateau, my personal theory, there isn't really any consensus on this, so I'll just kind of spiel my theory on it, is that because it pollinates through wind, it determines it'll self-hermaphrodize. So as I was saying before about my theory that it likes its climates, likes to move around. So when it's then evolved from the plateau, it's then moved down, eventually low enough to where then earliest humans in the region will have been. They'll have then found the different expressions of it. Anyone that's bought even genetics from some of the reputable seed banks that we have around, you see such diversity because she doesn't standardize. You can call it this one cultivar, but inside that cultivar are potentially thousands of chemovars. So the more we're learning about this, the more we're learning about the diversity of it and how it's spreading and how it's breaking up. So basically, through human intervention and through moving it through different climates and through adapting it to different means, and because we've been very prudish for a long time, and you are not allowed to get high, but you can get depressed, so you can get drunk, you can depress the system, that's fine, but you're not allowed. Almost fun. British seem to be averse to fun. So that meant that we only focused on the fiber. We focused on nutrition, so we wanted more seeds. So we prefaced male plants. We prefaced the fibrous materials, as I was saying, because it was valuable for the economy and necessary for a hell of a long time throughout our history. CBD versus THC seems to only exist because CBD managed to skirt its way through a black hole, as it were, within the regulations. And we have seen the bastardization of this debate and discussion by, again, venture capitalists. They've co-opted this plant. Instead of going, okay, we found this other part of this plant. Wow, it can do all these wonderful things. What happens if we put it in conjunction with this? We went, get that out of there, figure out a way to make money out of it. Separate it, isolate it. Now look where we are, synthetic cannabinoids. We've seen what happens with synthetic cannabinoids in closed populations. Look at any British prison and the epidemic of spice. The first spice strain, K2, actually came out of Pfizer. Interesting. So yeah, these guys have been trying to patent nature for a very goddamn long time. And look at the consequences that happen when you let the big medical cannabis industrial complex go wild. So medical versus recreational. I was supposed to air quote recreational because I hate the word. I say adult consumption now because recreational has become a very derisive and a very negative sort of term. But ultimately, again, the vast majority of people that now consume medically started recreationally, or they got it from a so-called recreational market. So this is, again, we need to be wary and mindful of our history, of the legacy versus contemporary market. Legacy is what the black market, as it used to be called, again, a racist term, creating certain imagery. You know what I mean? It's, again, something that we have to be wary of, is the language that we use when discussing all of this. They've then put patient versus consumer within this, of going, if you get your piece of paper, oh, you're a patient, you're protected, you cool. You're a consumer. I don't care what it does for you, where's your paper? That's the system we've created. What the hell is the difference between the product if it works for the individual? Cannabis is never, in the entirety of human history, we have not had one recorded death. Believe me, people have tried. Go ask Willie Nelson, go ask Tommy Chong. These guys have spent a lifetime trying to get high enough that they would fall into that group, wanting to be the first guy to die from weed. It ain't gonna happen, guys. But you know what's killing people en masse? Synthetic cannabinoids, the consequence of prohibition. Legalization versus decriminalization, the ultimate false dichotomy. We cannot legalize cannabis because it is not illegal. It's unlawful. It already exists. Look at the letter of the law in this country. Look at what acts are illegal versus unlawful. If you carry a weapon in the street, is that illegal? No, you're in an unlawful possession. Because there are positions where it's lawful to obtain and control or possess the article in question. So because of this, we've been led into this idea that the only way to stop the criminalization of us is either through a tacit thing where the police go, go on then, we'll leave you alone. And that could be the rug pulled at any moment. Or we have a bastardized legalization model where they say, all right, we'll create the most restrictive system we can, all of these taxes, all of these impediments to entry, all of this pay to play, yeah, 50 grand for your license, yeah, 25 to join this industry. Where's the average consumer? Where's the legacy? Where's the guy who for 30 years has grown for his community and kept triad gangs, kept Albanians, Lithuanians, and all these other massive cartels that are moving into this country? Because we're refusing to allow our people to cultivate cannabis. We have to be aware of what we say when we say it. Because every time we say medical cannabis, we make cannabis not medical. Every time we say hemp has the ability to do this, we're saying cannabis doesn't. We have to be mindful of that language. We have to honor the legacy and the history and that which has been. How am I doing with time? So yeah, final sort of point on this. Time to deschedule cannabis. What we can do. So yeah, I said deschedule it. I say we tear Motor up. I say we go to the UN and we say, look at the 61, 71, 88 convention. What is the foundation of this? What was the purpose for this when it was written? Does it make sense today? No, not in the slightest. We are burning alive. Half of the world is on fire. Half the world can't eat. Half the world doesn't have clean water. Yet we have the most viable resource to protect ourselves, to sustain ourselves, to repair the damage and the stupidity of capitalism. I'm not saying let's go socialist and all live hippie in the woods. There is a middle ground here, but it starts through truth, through honesty, and through the ability for us to educate ourselves beyond what they want us to know. And I started this as a conspiracy theorist. I started many years ago at a point where a lot of people went, yeah, whatever, kid. Now look at me. They give me points on stage. They give me mics around fires to entertain people. I want a podcast, I want a show. Because what I believe that I have shown and what I believe that I will continue to show with my work is that all of this is so interwoven in connection to human survival that if we don't get over the stigma of enjoying this as a drug, then we're not going to have a home, and I mean that as a planet to live in. There will be no clean air, there will be no clean food, there will be no clean water. We will die and choke from the consequences of a previous generation who said to us that cannabis is bad. Why? Because it's illegal. Why is it illegal? Because it's bad. Fuck them. Sorry, Sam, I've sworn 3 times. I don't know if I'm allowed to, but that's my third. I'm doing all right. We shouldn't kowtow down to that. We shouldn't give in. We shouldn't give our sovereignty. We are human. We are born with the same unalienable rights as everybody else. They may have money, power and connection, influence. We have each other. We are tens of, if not hundreds of millions strong around the world. We have this knowledge. We have this power. We have the space, the freedom, and the ability to overgrow the system, to speak our truth to power, to fight these false dichotomies. And it starts with educating ourselves. So, folks, thank you very much for listening to me. Oh my God.
Check.
Got Q&A?
Yeah, Q&A. If anyone has any questions, just put your hand up and I'll come and give you the microphone.
You mentioned the medical industrial complex, right? Mm-hmm. So I deal with the prison industrial complex. So with all these sort of industrial complexes going around, I mean, how are we going to sort of progress and move forward in the way that you just sort of said right at the end?
They all require consent. Mm-hmm. If you really think about it at the end of the day, systems of power or anything that requires you to be a consumer, you don't consume, you don't participate. I qualify for a medical prescription. I'm not going to go and get one. Doesn't matter how cheap you make it. I don't care. That's not the point. Until we're all free, until we all have the right to just cultivate a plant and enjoy it, why access it? Why get a piece of paper of a card that's going to give you discretion or the ability to fight a cop? Do you know how many police I've been up against? You know what I mean? The Cardiff, I led the march 3 years in a row, and literally the second year they just went, deal with the cops. Third year I turned up, the cops went, hey, how are you doing, Simpa? They just don't give a shit. You know what I mean? Once they know who you are and that you're not trying to fight them, obfuscate, hide from them, if you're genuine to them, they don't think, what's he hiding? What's he got? Has he got a weapon or whatever? Literally, I walk up to a couple of joint, like, how are you doing? You know what I mean? I'm very lucky, again, because of my colour, because of the way I speak, and because of what I know. I can usually tie him up in knots, and a couple just kind of go, sitting with my time. You know what I mean? So what we do is we educate ourselves to the point of we empower ourselves so that they can't rule us through fear. I still get it, don't get me wrong. I mean, I've got CPTSD from childhood, but it's still triggered by when I see a blue light. If I see a blue light of siren, even last night, man, you guys had the blue light going around, and I was talking to someone, I'd catch it, and I'd go, what am I doing? That's institutional, like, systemic fear that has been ingrained. I didn't do it. It's been ingrained in us, and because of these systems of oppression and control. And it is just, we have the autonomy and the power. We have to exist in this world. Yeah, we're going to have to, in some ways, pay taxes. There are ways to obfuscate that. Obviously, the more money you have, somehow the less you pay. Don't know how that one works. But there are means and ways, and those that know hide that knowledge. The difference is that we, through our diversity, through the multitude of beautiful, lovely, weird and wonderful people that consume cannabis or consume and fight for drug rights, we have access to everything. We're in that prison system. We're in the medical system. You know, we're in politics. We're in academia. We're all there. Where do you think they got the idea to go, I'm going to go study how what happens if I give octopuses MDMA? That was a legitimate study. Where do you think the guy got the inspiration from that? Do you not think he was at a festival somewhere and be like, oh my God, you know, where does it, come on. We're already here. The problem is the idea of then capitalism, the idea of going, I'll make you rich beyond your dreams. I'll protect you if only you shh. So we can either have hundreds of billionaires, thousands and thousands of millionaires, and the world ends, or we can share that capital resource, which is cannabis, and rebuild our entire infrastructure. And I know that sounds utopian, it sounds hyperbole, it sounds unobtainable. I'm a die-hard optimist. Again, my missus will probably disagree with that, and a lot of people that read my work will. But I fight and I do what I do, and I try to articulate this because I truly believe in this. And I truly believe that each of us have a piece of that larger puzzle. It starts with talking to our friends, our family. You know, don't risk your careers, guys. Don't risk losing something on it. Yeah, I'm nervous. But speak that truth. But protect yourselves. Be genuine. You know what I mean? Someone says, you smoke a spliff? Yeah, I am, yeah. Don't hide it. Don't run away from it. Don't go up to a cop and put yourselves in serious trouble with it. But it starts from going out a little bit and out a little bit. And before long, yeah, you put a couple of plants in. Yeah, I got 10 in the back room. You know what I mean? And what you can do in that is you can remove yourself from a criminal market. You can grow the cultivars that best suit you. You can give yourself access to a resource that helps you grow your way out of austerity and poverty. And I think that is the biggest thing of why these complexes, why these cartels of individuals work the way they do, is because if we had that power, they wouldn't need to exist. So plant a seed, plant a seed, smoke a bit of weed, talk to some people, engage in the world in a different way. Be open, be vulnerable, be beautiful. That's the answer, man. I don't want to be cold and hard and in a suit. I've spent years like this trying to figure out, do I have to wear a suit to get up here? No, I just keep talking shit and eventually they'll give me a mic. You know what I mean? It's just be you, be your weird, wonderful self. And through that, honestly, that is how we change the world. Still three. Yeah.
Brilliant talk.
Thanks,
Again,
man.
absolutely fantastic. Look, the end goal here is complete legalization and freedom of medical cannabis, right? So
Freedom of all cannabis.
freedom of all cannabis. I completely couldn't agree more. Now, you touched on a few notes on your medical cannabis slide, obviously in terms of data collection, suppression of research and knowledge, private clinics. Now, the psychology of the prescriber is very different. Now, in medical school, you'll get taught that cannabis gives you psychosis. Essentially, medicine, you're following a script. Mm-hmm. You identify pathology and you check the script and you say, okay, I've identified the pathology and now I can give this drug, this drug, or this drug. The only education you have on cannabis is bad. Now, in order to change that psychology, you need the evidence, you need the data,
Agreed.
and you need to play the game. Now, in order to get to the end goal, there's a game that we've got to play, right? Now, how is it that we start educating our clinicians a little better than what we are now? Because at the end of the day, they are the key in order for us to get to that step one, to then step 2, 3, 4, and then legalization. So, please. I see
exactly what you're saying. And the method I went to personally, for example, is I hit GP after GP that went druggy. And then I ended up doing a documentary with the BBC about LSD. And it went big. And I went, what if the police come through my door? What if they see that and go, let's go talk to this kid. So I went to my doctor and I went, I use these substances and these compounds, here's why I use them. You have seen you can look at my health records, which I've actually got them recently, they're about that thick. I've been in and out of systems for most of my life. And this one then doctor, then a fluke, actually went, all right, let's have a look. We had a conversation, he put on my notes that Mr. Carter believes that. And then he listed the therapeutic uses. You know, he kept himself safe enough, but I needed it for legal backing if ever I'm screwed in court, you know what I mean? And I think it was persistence, but I'm safe. I didn't have kids. I didn't at the time drive, so I didn't risk my driver's license. But some people, if they then say it to their doctors, oh, DVLA is contacted, oh, social services are contacted. So they're still seeing the doctor as the enemy. If we can remove criminalization and their ability to ruin our lives for being honest to them, then we can talk to them. But until we do something that actually gives us that safe space to communicate and be honest and vulnerable with them, frankly, we're not going to. Look, you've heard how I speak and what I know. I have recently just been denied counseling, a version of therapy for something that I've uncovered in my past that is something that I feel I need help with. I was denied access to this because Mr. Carter consumes cannabis. And I'm going to deal with that system. I'm going to educate them. I don't even care, actually, at this point if I get that therapy, because it's going to be cathartic and therapeutic, educating those people on their ignorance. Because... basically, we need to remove the punitive measure from the GPs to be able to harm the patient, for the patient to be able to be honest. That's what I would say. I hope that answered your question, man. Mike's going.
Going back to that, it starts with equality, because a lot of patients think that a GP overrules them, overlords them, and knows better than them. I'm a psychologist, and I've had a stand-up row with a GP because he studied the whole body for 5 years and didn't understand PTSD, and I understood the brain for 5 years. I studied the brain and PTSD for 5 years, and he didn't have as much information, but he thought he was better than me because he was a GP. Sorry if anybody is a GP and you are not that person, but a lot of it starts with that equality, being able to go in and say, actually, I have tried all of these things, I want to try this. We pay you, not you tell me what I can have. And yes, they do prescribe from a book. Yes, psychologists prescribe from a book. And you know what? If you admit to smoking cannabis, the NHS will not give you any psychology support at all until you quit.
I got lucky through third-party access for many years, and actually the clinicians that I dealt with, they were good people. They came from sort of music festivals during the summer kind of background, you know what I mean? They know a bit more of humanity, let's put it that way. But it's exactly what you kind of both have touched on, is that unfortunately modern pharmacology in the GP is basically a drug dealer. And we could use it with an algorithm. You say a few keywords, it goes, is it this? Yes, click, dispense. They're not healers anymore. I mean, look, I'm not religious in the slightest. I'm a little bit spiritualist because I've done a hell of a lot of entheogenic substances. But doctors ended up coming to replace our spiritual leaders and healers. So rather than being able to find someone to confide in, you literally go there to get a substance, a prescription. And if you don't get that prescription, we're psychologically trained to be like, you didn't listen. I'll go find the next doc, and then it's the next paper, and you're trying to get. And we've been trained into this quick fix culture of going problem, solution. Instead of going problem, whoa, what caused the problem? Identifying our behavior, identifying what's in our diet, what's in our environment. What are we doing that's causing this dysregulation or this disharmony within our system? And I think that until we can get back to a position where GPs are more empathetic, I guess, but how do you teach empathy? These guys, some of them go through 10 plus years of education. After us, would stare at books like, how could you not be dehumanized? If you see dozens of people every day, some of them you know are going to die, literally very soon. You watch the suffering, you know the severity of their condition, and every day you've got to deal with that shit. I imagine it would make you cold. I imagine as well, knowing that much about the human body and having that level of information and finance, you would kind of feel a bit entitled to be like, no, you don't know shit. You really don't know this. So I can see both sides. And as I say, I think that this is why I advocate for instant decriminalization. It could be done tomorrow. Nobody should face prison or a negative consequence for cultivation, possession, distribution, or consumption of cannabis. If we want to then work out commercial regulations to sell it, to trade it, whatever, hell yeah, that needs regulating. But if I want to grow 2 plants at home and give this guy an ounce, who the hell should be there to stop me? You know what I mean? I've paid tax on my lights, on my newts, on my water, on my feed. I pay more tax than Google, yet you want more tax from us. Screw it. No, the system breaks free because we all get access. My vision is that GP goes, sounds like you need some ghost OG Kush. All right, so we've got these seeds. What you're going to do is, right, if you germinate it like this, that's the future I see. Honestly, that is the future, because cannabis is not this panacea. It's not a cure-all. But because of the endocannabinoid system affecting everything from respiration to reproduction and shitloads of things in between, I think it's 5, in between, it's going to help all of these other things. And as we know, modern pharmacology causes a lot of, yes, symptom suppression, but creation of new symptoms, new side effects. What do you get? More pills, more side effects, and it compounds and it becomes an ever-increasing mathematical problem where you cannot pin the root cause. When actually, if you stop and go back, what was the issue? Back pain. What happened? Oh, he's carrying heavy boxes at work. He never asked him. He never found out. Instead, you've gone through this whole course, and that's what's happening with they're seeing this assembly line of problems because of that over-specialization of education to memorize effectively a drug list. Dealers don't do that. They have a menu. They post it out to you. They forget, and they say, oh, you got the gold? Yeah, I'll have that. And if they had that, they'd have more compassion, more love, more connection, more humanity. If they weren't at conferences 14 weekends a year, they'd actually be with their kids and with their family. To be more human, to be able to see the human in the patient. You're not here for my profit. You're not here for my golfing trip or for my extra car. And I think that's what can change it. Again, I've been painted possibly quite a lot by my own words and work as quite an extremist, as an idealist, as a utopianist. But I've seen what's changed in 6 years. And I've also seen what's gone wrong in 2 within this medical industry. Things are moving. So I think that we can all be part of that change and all of that future if we just tell the truth, if we're just honest, if we just engage with each other, recognize that commonality, that beautiful, lovely, smiley face in each of us, and just be the wonderful freaks that you are. I'm not going to swear on this finish. Peace.
Ladies and gentlemen, Simpa.